Hello fight fans, welcome back to What Culture Combat. I am Gareth Morgan and today we're going to go through a bit of boxing news. We've had a bit of a scoop really because Eddie Hearn has had a nice conversation with BBC Radio 5 Live. That was the show, that was the Costello and Bunch show. Just want to double check I get that right. But yeah, he went into a few things. He talked about Joshua's future, what fights he could have on the horizon for 2020 going forward. He talked about, not Deontay Wilder, he talked about Dillian White, he talked about Derek Chisora. Yeah, a lot of kind of moving chess pieces, kind of setting their stall out for probably from April to June, which is a nice kind of span there, 10 to 12 week span of what's going to happen. So the first piece of information that we really got from this interview was that Eddie Hearn was suggesting that Joshua would have his next fight after wherever the next fight is. After that, at some point in the future, he's going to have a fight in Congo, the Dominican Republic of Congo. Obviously, it's very famous because that country and this stadium in particular housed the Rumble in the Jungle fight, Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman. Legendary fight, one of the biggest fights, if not the biggest fight of all time. He actually said as much in the interview. He said it's probably the most famous venue or fight of all time. The DRC, the Dominican Republic of Congo, is looking to regenerate the stadium. That's special, that's legacy, that's career defining. He said there have been meetings held about that, but it's just pie in the sky at the moment, but the approach is there, and it's something we'll have to look into. So he's heavily hinting towards it. I think he likes the idea right now of Joshua being a global fighter. You know what I mean? So he went to the Saudis, had that fight there, had that win there, kind of raised his stock over there in Saudi. Went over to America, he lost, but he still got that exposure in America. He was suggesting in this interview that he'd maybe take him out to China, the Far East. He really likes that idea of selling him as a global superstar. The likes of Tyson, the likes of Lennox Lewis, the likes of Tyson Fury now, they're all fighters kind of loved around the world. I think he wants that for Joshua. He doesn't just want him to be kind of a homegrown UK superstar, which he is already. He's got a bigger vision for Joshua, and I think he needs that if that fight against Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury is going to get set up in the future. He needs that kind of support of the world right now, because he does just feel at times like a bit of a UK kind of specialist, loyalist kind of fighter, and he needs more support from around the world. I think that's what he's kind of hinting at. But equally, this move sounds like it's more of a financial opportunity for them. Obviously, your career as a boxer, career as a fighter in general, is not long. It's not a long career, so you want to make as much money as possible. And for me, that does make sense. If he wants to go back to Saudi at some point, go to Congo, they're going to be lucrative deals regardless. So I think he's trying to sell it as a legacy thing. Going to the stadium is great for his legacy, but it's definitely a financial thing. But the next fight that is going to happen, apparently, it's his likely next opponent is going to be Kubrat Pulev. And he kind of hinted again in this interview that fight is definitely going to happen in the UK, most likely. But he wants it to be in a big stadium. So the stadiums he kind of threw out. He threw out, let me get these here now. He threw out the Emirates Stadium, he threw out Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Olympic Stadium, the Millennium Stadium, and Twickenham. Obviously, I think Twickenham, I'm not sure if it's had a boxing fight ever there, so that'd be a cool one. But I think right now the one that kind of jumps out there is Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Brand new stadium. It'd be really cool if that could be the first real mega kind of fight attraction to happen inside there. It's built for that, do you know what I mean? The massive kind of wall that they've got inside there, the wall of fans, it'd be great, I think that'd be a spectacle event. But Hearn, all the way through this interview, suggested that these fights are great in the UK, you get these massive stadiums, but in terms of the actual deals that are struck up, they don't get as much money as what they do from these like overseas fights. So even though Joshua does want to come back and does want to fight kind of in the UK for his legacy, for his fans over here, going forward, he's taking a pay cut. He's saying that he's taking a pay cut by coming back to the UK, and he needs to, like I said, he needs to kind of try and earn as much as he can in the short career that he's got. So yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 coming back to the UK, but I'd be interested. I'd really like to see that fight happen inside of Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Personally, I think that'd be, I think it's made for it, really. It's a great stadium. Okay, also in this interview, he confirmed that Derek Chisora will be taking on Alexander Usyk. That fight will be happening towards the end of April. He thinks that's going to definitely take place. You've got to think of Usyk's the undefeated fighter at this point. He's 17-0, I believe. He's not really dabbled that much in the heavyweight world at this point. I think if he gets past Chisora's no pushover, and Hearn actually said it in this interview himself. And he's going to sell him. He's going to big up the fight. He doesn't want to go in there and say, oh, Chisora's a chump and Usyk's going to batter him, because if that doesn't happen, it makes Usyk look silly, and if he does beat him, then yeah, Usyk was meant to beat him. Do you know what I mean? So he's trying to sell the fight, which makes sense. But if Usyk gets past Chisora, then you've kind of potentially got Joshua versus Usyk, and that fight could actually happen in the Congo. Yeah, potentially. That'd be an interesting fight. Usyk's undefeated. Everyone loves that, the whole undefeated moniker, taking on Joshua. Joshua gets that notch in his belt. He's beaten probably pound for pound one of the best fighters on the planet. So Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Then also, the word on the street based on this interview is that Dillian Whyte will be taking on Andy Ruiz Jr. at some point. That's, again, I think it's towards the end of April or May. Yeah, that is towards the end of April as well. So that's, whoa, you got some kind of mega fights there. You got some interesting fights. I'd be interested to see how Andy Ruiz bounces back after that Anthony Joshua fight. He said it himself, he didn't prepare well enough for that fight. He said he was going to get out all this money, all this fame, all this spotlight, and he kind of lost his head. So it'd be interesting to see if he can pick himself back up and get a decent win over Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte's doing quite well himself. That'd be a good scout for him. These are really interesting matchups. I'm actually really interested to see what happens with these. But so if you kind of base out this timeline right now, you've got 2 fights potentially towards the end of April, the Chisora, Usyk, and Whyte Ruiz fight. They all do happen. And then I believe the Joshua Pulev fight is going to be towards maybe the end of May, start of June. So you've got like a 10-week kind of cluster of fights there, which could change the entire heavyweight landscape, really. Like, anything could happen in those fights. Then obviously you've got Wilder Fury, which is happening very, very soon. So that's going to be, well, it's going to be madness as well. That whoever wins that fight, you have to think Joshua's going to have them in his sights. That could happen. Or maybe they could be contractually obliged to a third fight. You don't know. There's that many random contracts in the air now. Everyone's got their own kind of, not sponsors, they've got their own companies they're working for. The heavyweight scene right now is in limbo, really. Anything could happen in the next couple of months. So I'm super, super excited. Also, just as a little tidbit on the end of that, all 3 of those fights potentially could be going down in the UK. So us British fans right now, we're spoiled. Everyone else around the world, I'm sorry, but yeah, we're getting all the fights right now. So yeah, just to kind of roughly sum up, the key takeaway from this Eddie Hearn interview was the fact that he was saying the countries like Saudi Arabia, the countries like China, Congo as well, they're all willing to stump up a lot more cash than the UK right now to get these mega fights and get these big deals in place to house these incredible fights in their stadiums in their countries. It's a bit unfortunate if you're a British boxing fan and you want to see these fights live, but there's nothing stopping you getting on a flight. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, but there's nothing stopping you getting on a flight, going to Saudi, going to China, and exploring these parts of the world because of this fight. So if you got the money, it could be a nice kind of positive thing going forward. Okay, and that is our roundup from that Eddie Hearn kind of exclusive interview with BBC Radio 5 Live. What did you think of Anthony Joshua potentially taking on somebody in the Congo, in that Rumble in the Jungle Part 2, maybe even this year? What do you think of Dillian Whyte taking on Andy Ruiz Jr.? Maybe that could happen. What do you think of Derek Chisora taking on Alexander Usyk? A lot of interesting matchups potentially on the horizon. This heavyweight division is looking like probably it is. For me, it's the most entertaining division in boxing right now. Can't wait to see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. I've been Gareth from What Culture Combat. Thank you very much, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.